Okay, this ad is for the person who keeps saying, we'll start packing next week.
Next week, Rach, is not a date. It's an emotion.
Exactly. And suddenly it's 2 weeks before the move and you're standing in the garage asking yourself, how did we collect so much stuff?
Avoidance usually means the task feels too big and too overwhelming, not that you're lazy.
Which is why STG Concierge Moving and Organizing exists. They handle full home packing, downsizing, assisted living moves, and long distance relocations. You know, Dr. Boca, all the big stuff.
They bring the systems, timeliness, and calm leadership.
Translation, you don't have to panic pack at midnight anymore.
Which is excellent for our nervous system.
So if you've been stuck, overwhelmed, or pretending this move just isn't even happening, check out www.stgconcierge.com. Let the professionals take the lead.
What do you get when the audacious and the therapist collide? A crash course in unpolished therapy. Rachel Silver-Cohen and Dr. Boca aren't afraid to spin out of control, tackling all the tough talk. Their weekly sesh meets at the corner of Audacity and Advice, where their wheels and yours get turned upside down.
Hi, Dr. Boca. Good morning.
Hey, Rach. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I feel a little beat up, which is interesting given the topic that we're going to have and the guests that we're going to talk about today. But I do feel a little beat up. I got sick after spring break and I'm just getting back into the groove. And but I'm excited to be here.
Well, hopefully we can infuse a little bit of audaciousness and a little bit of advice. And we're meeting on the corner of those two intersections. And maybe we can make your little unpolishedness a little bit smoother.
I would love that. You know, every time I'm talking to you, it always makes it a better day. So
same. And today, I know kind of off camera and off air, we were talking about today's guests, which we always love having guests because we just, it fills us up with knowledge and wisdom and whatnot. And today, even though we're unpolished, we have a topic that really is unpolished, but kind of like in an opposite direction, because it's more serious than we would like it to be, because we live in a world that's a little chaotic and hectic and scary and mean, if you will, right? I don't want to prolong this introduction here, but we do have Samantha Sosnik with us, who is a special needs educator and a wife and mother of two beautiful daughters. And she actually, Dr. Boca, hosts her own podcast. She's a fellow podcaster.
I love that.
Yeah. And her podcast is titled Putting the Brakes on Bullying. So, I mean, if that gives you a little insight into what we're going to kind of dive into today and break the wreckage down.
Yeah.
In today's world, I feel like, I don't know about you, but there's not a day that goes by that I'm not hearing about some type of something, bullying, cyberbullying, even adults for that matter, which
many adults
probably dive into that too.
Yes.
But I think it's so terrific that someone like Samantha is committed and so passionate about trying to put her imprint on the world in helping to make the world a little bit kinder, a little bit safer, and a better place for all of us, especially the younger generation and those to come. So I say we bring her on board and have her meet us at the corner of Audacity and Advice, and let's get our wheels spun.
Awesome. Hello, Samantha. How are you?
Hi, guys.
Hi, Samantha. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's our privilege to have you on board. I know how busy you are. And as I said to Dr. Boca, we are not ever going to turn our backs on another individual who is trying to make this world a better place. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Boca, you want to start with cue number one?
I mean, the question that first comes to mind is it something in your life, or was this an observation that you had, or how did you get into tell our listeners, because this is a heavy topic and not everybody speaks about it or makes it a life mission. So tell us about it.
Yes. Well, I always have been very passionate about anti-bullying. You know, anytime I hear of a story, I'm just, my nature has always been to help the underdog. It's just something that I feel good about. At the end of the day, I put my head on my pillow and I have hoped I have helped somebody else, whether it be a contemporary of mine or a friend's child or whatever the case. If I hear of a story, I want to help. It's just my thing to do. And this particular podcast came to life from an experience that I had with my daughter. I have two daughters. I have an older daughter with special needs who's 21, and I have a younger daughter who's now 16. And this came about because of a personal experience I had with my 16-year-old. At the time, she was about, I would say, almost 13 when this started happening. And I'll get into that in a minute. But I think part of my personality when it comes to helping others derives from my childhood and being in a home that was extremely abusive with two narcissistic parents. And I feel like people that go through traumatic experiences like I did, I think hopefully, but in my case, I feel like I became a person of compassion. I recognize when somebody is suffering or depressed or maybe in a bad situation, or they just need someone to talk to, which I can never turn my back on somebody in that position. And growing up that way, growing up with two parents like I had, I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me, and we were very close growing up, and he kind of took care of me in the chaos. And I tried to take care of him as I got older, because unfortunately, we both had a ton of problems and a ton of emotional issues. And I went one way where I wanted to make my life better and become a person of society and do the right thing and be happy. And my brother went the other direction, and he's currently a drug addict, alcoholic, and homeless. So it's, as much as I tried to help him, it's a situation that I can't really get involved with anymore because it's too much for my family and there's no end in sight. So I really had to take and put the brakes on that and say, I need to pull myself out of that. But getting back to how this came about, when I experienced what I experienced with my daughter, my 16-year-old, and ironically enough, my special needs daughter would be the person I think a lot of people would think.
I was going to say that. Yes.
I have never, I confidently say never have had an experience with any bullying with her.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that says something.
I want to jump in for a minute, and you haven't even shared with our viewers and listeners what the scenario was with your other daughter. But I want to pose a question also to Dr. Boca from the non-therapy standpoint, and say that in today's world, when we hear bullying or cyberbullying so prevalent, right?
Yep.
What I find is that the individuals with special needs are not the ones that are being bullied for the most part, at least that I know of, versus when I was growing up where they were. And so where I feel as though we've kind of turned the corner, I would hope as a society, but people in our sphere, and you would hope that widens, that we learned our lesson that everyone deserves to be treated with kindness, no matter how special, quote unquote, you are or not.
Yes.
Why do you think then all the attention now that it's so much more prevalent with, I don't want to use the word right, I don't even know what the politically correct word to say is, but to Samantha, her other daughter.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer for that really based on research or anything, right? But interestingly, I don't think that that's an absolute. I think there are places and people that still do take things out on special needs individuals. However, I think that it's so easy now to take it out on anybody that they don't have to find a group like special needs where everyone used to jump on that bandwagon. Now there doesn't even have to be a reason. People will just jump on the bandwagon for power, for control, for because we come now with all the social media in the world. We have people who have such low self-worth and have to feel better by putting other people down.
That is
They'll do it
100% correct. Yeah.
yeah, they'll do it to anybody that they can, and anybody who responds to it, they'll keep going. So I also think that what might have happened with special needs individuals is they didn't respond. They didn't. It's like when you're working with narcissists, right? We always say, stop feeding the narcissist. That's their supply, right? The second you stop giving them what it is that they're knowing that they have you, knowing that you're reacting, that's what keeps them going. The special needs community, because they were not really involved in it and didn't care, and were so oftentimes special needs individuals are so happy and grateful in life that like they just see the good, the inherent good in people, right?
It's amazing. I walk into my daughter's group home. She lives in a group home in Boca, and I walk into her home, and I say this so often. It just you walk in there, and they're just like, Samantha, oh my God, when are you coming back? Like they have a million questions, and they're like, we're going to the movies tonight, and we're having dinner, and we have a party tomorrow, and it's someone's birthday. Like the most natural, authentic human beings that are just happy to be doing something. And they have, in the home, my daughter is one of 8 residents. They can't have any more than 8. They each have their own bedroom, 2 share a bathroom. There's a big living room and a kitchen, and there's 24-hour care. And they are just amongst their people. Like they
and happy
and
pure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other issues, and having Avery for 21 years has been a definitely
challenge,
a challenge in my life that I've always welcomed, and I would never have it any other way. But it's a whole different path than having it. It's just, you take care of, you take care of your typical children, and you hope that at some point they come back and take care of you, but it's not that way with the special needs community. You have to worry about what's going to be after you're no longer here, and it's a very daunting, a lot of planning. And thank God my daughter Tatum is extremely compassionate to her sister. I think that's another reason why she is who she is, because even though she's 5 years younger than her, she has seen and been around that community so much. She knows what it's like to treat people kindly. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. So
Dr. Boca, so let's so for generalization purposes, then we're going to say that maybe the mainstream bullies in the world don't necessarily get the reaction that they want from potentially the special needs community. And therefore, maybe we're seeing it more prevalent with more mainstream individuals for the purposes of this podcast.
Right. And I would also say that one of the ways that we get rid of, I don't know if we'll ever get rid of bullying, but one of the ways that we manage bullies is we try to insulate ourselves with other people around us, right? Because they like to go after an individual who seems isolated and alone, right? And so in the special needs community, we spent so much time celebrating them and helping them become inclusive and helping them be part of something, that they've become this insular supported group. So again, the supply. Community. Right. So again, the supply, if they come after somebody in the special needs community, I could bet my life's money that if somebody came after your daughter, you would come out like a mama bear, as would all the other people in your community.
And anybody that would be with her. If I ever witnessed anything, would not, I tend to have I have a lot of tolerance, but I have zero tolerance when it comes to harming another person, whether it be physically, obviously, but even so mentally, I just can't. That's just not my thing. I don't do well with that.
So I think that's why, is because we've built up an acceptance and a love for this group of individuals and therefore we're cutting off the supply to the bullies.
You can't penetrate through that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. You have to be a special kind of low person to take advantage of a special needs person. I mean, that is
and yet people do.
Yeah. I mean, look at the world.
Yeah. Yep.
So Samantha, if you could maybe give us the broad stroke. I mean, again, in this case, it sounds as though before we even really dive into your platform and how you've helped so many, it seems as though you had a real personal scenario that you now are trying to turn around and help others.
Yes.
So do you want to give us maybe the broad stroke of what happened?
Absolutely. So we had moved to Florida probably about 6 years ago. I think it's going to be 7 in August. But anyway, we moved from New York to Florida, and it was great for my older daughter. After a couple of years, when she turned 18, we were able to put her in this great group home where she's taken care of, and she has programs and lots of activities, which is great. And my younger daughter just wasn't finding her niche there. She missed where she grew up in Merrick, and she just wasn't finding her place. So she went to the elementary school when we first got there. We didn't care for it that much. Then we went to a Jewish day school because she was going to incorporate her bat mitzvah preparation. And she did that for 3 years, and she was fine there, but it was a very small school, and she decided she wanted something bigger. She's a very social girl. She loves to have friends. She loves to have plans. And so we decided after the second school, the Jewish day school, that we were going to try this new school that was much bigger and just had a lot more to offer as far as the amount of students that were there. And she was going to be going to this school with a girl that she knew for many years from camp. So we thought, oh, perfect. They've been friends since she started camp. She went to camp when she was 8 years old. She was now, I believe, I'm thinking she was about 13. Yeah, she was 13 when this started. And
Which, if I can interrupt for a second, I can't think of a more difficult age for a adolescent, let alone a female adolescent, to move from one state to another, thinking that now they've got this camp friend that's going to embrace them and welcome them with open arms. And here we go. So go ahead.
Exactly. So, in my mind, in my world, when someone new is coming into a school, especially knowing the person was having a hard time acclimating to this new state and this new situation, for me, I know how Tatum would have responded to it. She would have been open arms, come meet my friends. Let's do this. You'll come here on the weekend just to get the person situated. And then whatever happens after that is, it's up to the person, up to Tatum to figure her way out. But at least there's a welcoming there. Mm-hmm. And that was not at all what happened. And it's funny, looking back, when I was talking to the mother who I was friendly with throughout all these years, being that they went to camp together, I remember thinking to myself at the time when I shared with her that we were going to send Tatum to this school. And I remember at the time that I thought to myself, it was a very, the body language was very off. Didn't seem like there was like an excitement there. It felt like there was something that was it was unsettling a little bit, but I brushed it under the carpet and moved ahead. And then my worst fear about that came true. And within like the first couple days of school, Tatum was coming home and telling me that she was being ignored. She wasn't being welcome. She was not being introduced to anybody. She was having a really hard time, acclimating. She would sit at that lunch table just because she knew some people, but there was no conversation towards her. She wasn't like, and this has been a rough road for her. She really, really, really gave it her all the first 4 years we were there. And now we're in the 5th year, and this is happening. I just was amazed that this was occurring.
So the exclusion was going on for 4 years?
No, it was not going on. She just wasn't finding her
She just hadn't gotten her rhythm. She wasn't in her groove. Okay.
She was still seeing this person over the summers because they were in separate schools. Okay. But for all that time. But then when Tatum moved into this new school, that's when all this stuff started. Okay. So I didn't understand really how to approach this because I know that upcoming summer she'd be going back to camp. And I didn't really know how to handle this because I just couldn't believe the things I was hearing. So at one point, my husband and I said to her, listen, you have to go and make friends elsewhere. That you can't rely on this person. They're clearly not welcoming you. On top of that, the other girls were told not to become her friends. So now she couldn't even make friends with these people, with these girls. And she was terribly uncomfortable. So we told her that you're going to have to, we're very straightforward with her. We especially my husband came out, he said, you're going to have to make other friends. You're going to have to find, maybe there's some other girls. You're going to have to get up from this lunch table and go somewhere else, because to be honest with you, you look like an idiot, right? So basically we told her, you look like an idiot sitting at this table, waiting and begging for someone to talk to you. The minute she decided to leave that lunch table, all of a sudden she starts getting phone calls and text messages, Snap or whatever they do, from this girl. So Tatum has always been taught, you want to have a discussion with somebody, you want to have you should do it face to face. There's none of this texting. Everybody's hiding behind these keyboard warriors. They sit behind these text messages. They probably get all their information from their mother, into what to write. And so I said to her, well, when you see her next time, you go up to her and say to her, what is it that you want to talk about? Let's talk in person. So she did that. I mean, back in school, I would have never done that, but she's a different kind of kid. So she had gone up to her, and she didn't think she had to go do it privately. She went over to her at the lunch table when she saw her lunch, and she said something, and the girl refused to talk to her. She says, we're not going to talk about this now. I'm not speaking to you about this now. And apparently had a nervous breakdown at school that Tatum said something to her. Okay. So fast forward, it's a very long story.
So the bully turned into, sorry to interrupt. It sounds like, so the bully turned into the victim in a momentary, right?
You have no idea how this person turned into the victim. The mother turned into the victim. She turned into the victim. I mean, it was done in a way that was like, I'm coming to talk to you. Okay. And now we can't walk somewhere else and go talk. We have to make it a whole dramatic thing. Okay. So now the funny thing is, you're going to laugh, but that afternoon I happened to go with my husband to go pick up Tatum together, and he gets a text from the father. So the father wants to speak to Sean about the situation that happened at school. Okay, so I happen to be in the car. The father calls, or we called back the father, and we're talking, and very nice. No reason not to discuss it with him, not to talk to him. No, always was a gentleman about things, and we went through everything that had been going on, because there was a lot more that was going on throughout this time period, and he didn't know anything. He had no idea. So apparently he didn't do a good enough job, because then the mother, who I am friendly with at the time, then texted me, wanted to speak with me more. So I did, and it didn't go over very well, because everything in the conversation was riddled with, not us, we didn't do anything, this is not true.
Not my daughter.
Not my daughter, no
Couldn't
accountability. And again, going back to my personality, I don't have any patience for that. I cannot have a conversation with someone that can't have a back and forth.
I don't want to interrupt the story, but I am going to interrupt the story, because I want to just draw a parallel, which is an opposite, actually, because as you're telling the story, I'm thinking about my childhood and some of the stories I'm sure we all have a story along the way, if not multiple. And Dr. Boga, maybe you can speak to the fact that, again, I don't know what went on in your home. I only know what went on in my home. And while I had loving parents, my parents were not involved. There was not one time that my mom got on the phone with another parent. And granted, we were also at a time where the phone was attached to the wall, and we had to get online to use the phone, but that is neither here nor there. So, maybe Dr. Boga, you can speak to, obviously there's a lot of different sides to a lot of different stories. Samantha, I can already tell, you and your husband seem like loving, compassionate parents who have, taught your daughter to rise above, kindness comes first, lead with love, etc. However, in today's world, it seems as though there's always so many cooks in the kitchen, and we know what happens. That soup gets spoiled. And Dr. Boga, I'm wondering, from the non-therapy standpoint, if you can speak to what happens when everyone is getting involved in a scenario that already is a bad scenario, what happens?
Well, it's going to become a disaster, right? But you have to think about it. I mean, one component of bullying, when we think about like what's underneath all this bullying, a lot of times it is what these children have seen, right? Apples and trees. We talk about it all the time, right? And so if you're seeing it and there's denial, not my child, oh, she didn't do it, it was this one, and there's blame, what are we expecting that the child's going to do, right?
Absolutely.
So to engage in the conversation, and you have one cook in that kitchen who is open-minded and wanting to dialogue and has taught their child the difference between right and wrong, so they know they're supposed to go up and have this conversation and engage the parents and figure out how we can work on it together. And we don't make the initial assumption that the parents are going to shut us down or blame or do all of that. We want to give them the benefit of the doubt, which you did by having a conversation with them. But the second that we kind of see that happening, the more you engage, again, it's feeding the bully, right? It's giving them the oxygen to now either continue to bully, to continue the bullying, I guess, or spin it so that they become a victim. And so therefore we disengage, right? There's no reason. We can take it to other places. We can take it up the hierarchy, right? But the worst thing we can do is engage directly with that bully at that point after we've made that one attempt, because that just they know they got it under us. They got under our skin, and you're going to come back and try to justify it and try to get it because we're coming from this logical place of like, of course they're going to understand me.
It's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Very
and
frustrating.
It's funny because, what's funny, you mentioned in the beginning when we started the podcast that, it happens in my age group in the next decade, and it's funny because I had an experience with this mother about probably 2 years prior to this, about a year prior, when the first camp girl had a bat mitzvah, and we all came up, a bunch of us came up from Florida, then the other people. I don't have to be asked to places. If I'm invited, great. If I'm not, that's fine too. But I wasn't included in any of those plans. And everybody knew, and I made a phone call that morning, when are you landing? And she told me, but yet they got together for dinner. I was in a different hotel. I didn't know they were staying in this hotel. And then I had a conversation with her about it because she sensed I was a bit perturbed about it, maybe within a few weeks after returning back to Florida. And again, the same stuff, the same excuses and this and that. And I'm like, whatever, for the girl's sake, I'm not going to get into it, but I don't believe a word you're saying is what I told her. And, so that's probably why the husband called the next time, because she wasn't able to penetrate me with her nonsense the first time. So that's how
and as an adult, right, it's easy to say, I don't let it affect me. I have tough skin. Obviously, our experiences have molded us and made us stronger for it. But we are still human beings,
of course,
and we have feelings. And then as a parent, on top of it, we all know we're only as happy as our unhappiest child. So as a parent, you can put on this brave face and you can model for your daughter right, wrong, and indifferent. But walk us through, Samantha, how this scenario shaped her and how you led still with love and kindness while you were probably hurting inside for your daughter that doesn't have the years of wisdom and experience on her side.
Yeah, very true. Very good point. We just really trudged through the year. We had been at another bat mitzvah of another girl from Florida, and it was an awful scene. I mean, the minute I got off the phone with this mother, she hit the ground running with trying to destroy my daughter's name. She managed, I don't know how, to get the entire bunk. There were a bunch of mothers that were bystanders, but there were the couple that joined in with her and their kids as well. So all of a sudden, Tatum's no longer on their group chat that they talk about things for the upcoming summer. Sure. I'm no longer in the mom chat. And every plan that came about, we were not included in. It was a year of not so much for me chaos, because my daughter was so devastated about this,
of course.
But like it was navigating through this whole thing, but never once did we falter and start running back or kissing ass. We were not doing that.
Good.
We were
Yeah.
standing, because I'd rather her stand alone by doing the right thing than, falling into that. We've never been those type of people.
Mhm.
So the entire year, the phone was being used to bully her, the abuse through Snapchat, the making fun. I still have all the snapshots of everything, and I will keep it to the day I die. So all this was going on for the entire year. And she got to the point, this was one of her favorite places to go to. And
Sure.
she got to the point where she was not going back. And she told me, I'm not going back. I don't want to go back. And then she said, I'm going back. I'm fine to go back. And then at the very end, she wasn't sure. And I said, listen to me. You're going to go back. You're going to go in there with your head held high. You're going to get other friends, not particularly in this bunk. But once she got to camp, things like settled down. The first day was a little hard for her to adjust, but it settled down. She went back into that same bunk, into the lion's den, so to
Good for
speak.
her.
And because I said, I told her, you are not going to let this person, this grown woman, because that was her goal, was to make sure Tatum didn't show back up at camp. And we weren't doing that. So she went back, and I was within a couple hours. And the first day of camp, they all kind of felt like it's unbelievable how cool you can be one day, and then all of a sudden everyone's like kumbaya.
Yeah.
And the daughter of this particular mother had to follow all the other people, into like, so she coexisted peacefully. She was friends mostly more with girls outside of the bunk. She had a great summer.
Good.
And pertaining to your question that you asked me before, that to me was, both my husband and I said, I don't think that would have ever happened to either one of us, to pack my bags and go somewhere that the entire year everyone was making you feel like you don't belong.
Well, and that's why the social media makes bullying so much more pervasive. Even if we globalize it more to now what we're seeing it happening in the world with anti-Semitism, just use that small example, right? It's not a small example, but we'll use
I know what you're saying now. Yeah.
Right. That example is people feel safer behind a screen, right? You call them the keyboard warriors, right? They feel safer because there's an anonymity to it, or there's a group of people that are surrounding them, right? And giving them support. They're giving them feedback. There's a feedback loop that goes with it.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible. But even that aside, I wanted to comment a minute ago to compliment you, right? Because there are not a lot of parents. When I work with parents now, it's very interesting about this generation of parents, our generation, right?
Yes.
We the parents, right? There's something very interesting about it. Is one of the most difficult things for parents to do is to stay consistent, right? And to follow through on what it is that they said. You're going to camp, and the child starts to rebel. They're like, okay, you're not going to camp, right? It's like the child is in charge. You were able to keep your ground. And that's what was so important for Tatum, right? Because she didn't go back to her happy place.
Yeah.
Not only did the girls win, right? And Tatum lost, she lost her favorite place in the world,
Exactly.
right? And who are we to do? And she would have always remembered that as a moment in time that she gave up versus this moment of time where she could fight through the most difficult thing. And that's what our kids' generation is losing, is that resiliency, right? They don't know that they can do it because we, the parents, are so afraid.
Right.
Exactly. And so I just wanted to,
easy.
Exactly.
You don't become stronger by shying away from difficult situations. And this was an opportunity for her. She came out of this. I cannot even tell you how proud her father and I were of her, because like I said, I don't know how many people would have done that. She said, okay, I'm going to go. And she went. And the first day was not easy because there was a lot of looking and sneering. And then it's amazing to me how quickly it switched into, lovey-dovey. But we knew the character of all these girls and the character of the parents. We knew that. So it was just a 7-week situation. And then we closed the door on that chapter when she got back. And she's like, oh, maybe I'll go back. I'm like, you're not going back. Now we're moving on to something bigger and better. And she went on a teen tour the following summer and loved it. So this was a chapter that like you said, in the future, she'll look back on it. And she persevered. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do. She was, it was 2 years ago. She was 14. That's not easy.
At any age, it's incredibly difficult. And my hat goes off to Tatum because she sounds like she's a strong young lady, which again, apple tree, with a mom like you, she's certainly destined for success. I want to jump in on two things. One, I think it is important, since this is a hot topic and a sensitive topic, we want to protect Dr. Boca's license. So I do want to remind the listeners and the viewers, while this is heavy duty and Dr. Boca, you're guiding us beautifully, it's not real therapy, and it is just technically entertainment value, although we hope that our listeners and viewers will get some real nuggets of wisdom and some good takeaway. But if you have any comments and concerns and issues, and if you unfortunately have been faced with any type of bullying in any capacity, please reach out to Dr. Boca privately, or whomever your healthcare providers are. So that being said, we want to protect.
It's very important. I've discussed my podcast with various people, and everyone has a story, or they'll say something, but the most heartbreaking story that I heard was a doctor I was speaking to, and he was discussing my podcast with me, and he was very interested in it. And he told me that his very dear friend from high school's daughter had recently committed suicide. And for me, and I hope for everybody else, the finality of something like that, what are the people, how do you feel about yourself? Or are you also the type of person to be such a vile human being that you will forget about that if you were the cause of something, because another child very well could have been so strung out if she didn't have the foundation and the parents that Sean and I had hoped to be towards her. Yeah. She could have another child could have very easily resorted to something, because this was bad. This was so bad. This was like something I've never seen before in my life. And I've seen things, but this was atrocious. How the mothers were involved. It was like an isolated incident with one-on-one. Why don't you just let it? Because like you said, Dr. Boca, in the beginning, the insecurity level of these people and the lack of self-esteem for yourself, it oozes out. Because if you thought your daughter can handle a situation with a friend not getting along, you wouldn't need to get so involved, and you wouldn't needed to make sure that someone else was in so much pain that they didn't show back up at their happy place, as she had called it all those years.
Yeah. And that is an important part of what feeds the bullying, is that when bullies bully, right, they have a difficult time empathizing with the pain that the person's going through. It's more self-focused on them getting control or dominance, or dealing with their insecurities, and therefore putting somebody else down or hurting somebody else, that they can't empathize with that pain. And especially on social media, there's that distance, which makes it even more difficult for them to empathize with the impact of the pain that they're putting on the victim. And, and again, it's horrible. And look, we're seeing it in the news this week with the social media lawsuit that just got settled.
I know, that was incredible. I was watching it. That was very impressive, by the way, that they went and gave a positive decision. I thought that was great. I think it's I think the phone and social media is unnamed drug for our children. I think it does so much damage.
It's an addiction. And from a bullying perspective, the difference between when our generation and this generation got bullied, right? We got to go home at the end of the day, and we could spend 12 hours if we chose to away from these people. We could go home. They went to their house. There was no knowing what I was doing, what they were doing. I couldn't see what they were doing. And we got 12 hours, and then we got this doesn't add up to 24, but you get the gist of the 16 hours, whatever it is. And then
you're not bullied in public, Dr. Boca. You're not bullied on a platform that's there for the entire world to see, even if it isn't their fight to fight. And that's what makes it so horrific, because you want to talk about stoking the fire there with cyberbullying and what's going on the internet and all of these platforms that everyone can stick their 2 cents in, where their money is not good here. And yet somehow it is creating such a bigger problem than what the issue was. Look, there's always going to be kids that are going to be mean on the playgrounds and they don't want to include people. But where we're at in this world now is why we need people like you, Samantha, that are trying to make sure that your voice is heard, that you can advocate for people who don't have a voice. And which leads me to something else that I want to mention here. We've now talked a few times about this keyboard warriors or these bullies that hide behind a screen and they have their anonymity covered where they don't have to be loud and proud about their bullying, which in my opinion makes them even more cowardly than an outward right? Okay. With that being said though, and not to get into the legality of it all, but with such a public view on this hatred, if you will, and the vitriol that we're seeing, are there consequences? Granted, the victory is when people like your daughter can rise above it and they can become stronger. But as a mom who has such anger hearing about an innocent kid who would be kicked when they're down, what are the consequences for these despicable, I don't even want to call them humans, but these animals?
I don't know, because like I said, you're not getting anything from the parents. I see it all the time. You're not getting, I mean, even when Tatum was young and she made a decision about something, I was never like, okay, honey, I'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, we're not doing that. You know, there was always and then again, of course, we have my older daughter, Avery. You know, she was from the very beginning, very motherly towards her. It was just innate in her that she was always trying to take care of her. But like, I wouldn't have allowed anything else. You know what I'm saying? And she tries to ingratiate her into lots of different things. And, you know, now they're separated by miles now, but whenever we're in Florida, we go down to Florida, she visits with her, she texts with her, she FaceTimes with her. She hasn't deserted her. And she's the person that I'm going to rely on when I'm no longer here. So she has this taught to her. Well, she didn't just, I mean, certain things are innate, but she was taught that certain things are unacceptable. Okay. Just because she's my daughter does not mean she's perfect. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to criticize. We always have talks. We're always discussing. I think a lot of parents are afraid to be the parent.
Absolutely.
And they want to be the friends. They, you know, we've seen parents that are spoken to by their children so disrespectfully. Like, that would never happen here. Like, there was never even an inkling that would be okay. So when you're teaching your children, you cannot do this. Like I always say, I'm raising my child to, and when I say child, I have another one, but it's a different path. Sure. When I'm raising my child, Tatum, I'm not raising someone to be accepting of everything. I'm raising someone that does the right thing, even if she has to stand alone. Like I firmly believe that. I live my life like that. You want to have me to something. You don't want to have me to something. I'm going to be fine. I got other things going on. I have a purpose. I want to do the right thing. I don't want to be liked, you know, and then you turn around, someone's talking behind your back. That's not my thing. I'm not interested in that.
And that's why your daughter is the way that she is, because it's learned behavior too, right?
It's by example, you know, it's by example. Like, you know, we all make mistakes, but to make a mistake so deliberate, it's not a mistake, by the way, that's the wrong word. It's so deliberate and it was so calculated. And, you know, after she had come back from that summer, little bits and things were happening again. I couldn't believe it. You know what it showed me is that without your phones and without your moms, you were able to behave yourself for the most part. But then when you got back home, whatever the reason was, you had to start in again. So she did what I approved of what she did. She told them basically what she thought about them. I told a couple of the mothers what I thought about them. And if I see them again, I'll tell them as well. I have no problem with that. To sit back and allow people to think this is okay. It's not. And if I help one person, I'm going to be thrilled. So that's, you know, it originated from my passion about, I remember telling my husband a long time ago that I'd love to do a podcast. I'd love to be a host of a podcast. I mean, and then when this happened, I was like, I'm doing a podcast, even if we have to build a studio, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And then I wound up on this podcast because I do volunteer work at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center in Glen Cove on Long Island. And they built a podcast studio. So it fell into my lap. It was like, Bashir, could be a host of a podcast. I'm like, what did you say? I'm like, I mean, perfect. I've been looking for this.
And by the way, the fact that you volunteer at or work at the Holocaust Center, right? What bigger bullying is there, right?
Well, it's funny you said that.
In our history, right? Than
Yes,
that.
yes, yes. I mean, it's funny you said that because I don't want to minimize the bullying between children to children or adults to adults.
Sure.
But that level of bullying, that is like, we're talking October 7th, we're talking about the Holocaust, we're talking about what happens to people just walking the streets with a Jewish star on. That is the epitome of bullying. What you take someone's vulnerability and what they did to, I mean, it's a big part of my life too, the Holocaust Museum and all the stuff regarding Holocaust survivors that I love to visit and become my friends. That is the epitome of bullying. That to me is, you can't get it. I mean, like I said, I don't want to minimize, because like I said, there are children that commit suicide over this. So we're talking about the same situation. But
they're all bullying. This is just at a level.
It's mind blowing.
Right. It's just at such a magnitude, and it cut across all ages.
Yes.
Right. And so it just is these individual bullying is just the microcosm of how long bullying's been going on. It's just been, there's always been going to be bullying, right? Like that is unfortunately, because there is always going to be that. However, it's terrible. However, what are the things that we can do to minimize the bullying, right? That's the important piece of it. And the truth is, it's like it's interesting because I was listening to one of your podcasts when I don't remember if you were interviewing or being interviewed on it, but one of the things that's so interesting, and I watch it on social media now, is with everything after October 7, you see all these college students who come up to, I don't know if you guys know the flag guy that holds the Israeli flag and the American flag and just stands
I believe
there.
so, yeah.
He stands on different campuses, right? And people just scream at him like, "You loser, you're genocide, why are you here, da 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 da." And then there are other students, and he tries to challenge them, right? And then there are other students that are sitting there trying to say, "But do you know what actually happened?" And
No,
there
they don't.
are a few people that when they show them, they are aghast. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Then why were you protesting like this? Why were you jumping on the bandwagon?" And they said, because they heard other things, right? And so I do think that social media plays a role. I do think our education plays a role. I think we've lost values. I think we've lost family values, right? And that's why I commend you, right? You have values and you have family values. We're not going to put up with this. This is unacceptable. You can't talk to me this way. That's a family value, right? And so I think those are some of the components of how we're going to minimize bullying. But it's still going to exist because of exposure and learned behaviors and just naivete and mental health issues that people are dealing with these insecurities and projecting them onto other people. So the struggle's real and it's horrible.
It is horrible. And I think the level of competition these days is like off the charts. I think that people are, gauging people and how they're going to be friends with someone by what they're wearing, what they can offer you. It's no longer about the person's soul and their core being. They don't take that into consideration. You could see, where I live now, back in my hometown that I brought up the children, there we have one mother that, handpicks kids for carpools because she thinks this one is a loser. She won't take them. Okay. And then there's kids left out, and she is a mastermind. She thinks she's a mastermind. She's not very good at it, but a mastermind at helicopter and social engineering. It's like another one it's just unbelievable. But again, you have to almost look at it and, as long as you have that barrier, that invisible barrier up of it's not going to affect me, and you're not going to get that, you're not going to affect me. The toxicity is not going to enter into you just got to hope everybody else wants to, be on the right side of things. But
you also have to hope that you are sewing up that wound before you bleed out, because to Dr. Boca's point, starts when you're young, depending on what you're surrounded by and your experiences in the home or whatever, religious beliefs, potentially, whatever, that then build over time. And then these young kids turn into, I don't want to say it, and they didn't just learn it at it nowhere. And that's why we have to try to stop it immediately and use to our advantage the positives of social media and being able to broaden our reach to get out the positive messages, because we're not going to beat social media and the internet. We just have to figure out a way to use it to our advantage to spread positivity and do what we can to put a Band-Aid on something that's a bleeding wound.
Yes.
Rachel, somebody sent me something. It takes me days to go through my DMs that people send me, like my friends send me. They all send me these cool memes and stuff. But literally today I was cleaning out my DMs and somebody sent the most beautiful reel. This guy, I think he was in the UK, his brother committed suicide many, many years ago. And he was like, I need to do something. And he started a program, and I didn't get all the details of it, but he came online to say that it worked. And what it was he used social media to help people who were struggling, were thinking about hurting themselves and killing themselves, and had strangers who had been affected by it tell them why they shouldn't, because why they need to be here. And he got feedback from somebody that those letters saved their life.
Yeah, I believe
That's
it.
amazing.
So
I love to hear that.
That is the positive. It's one person like you, Sam, who's getting on a platform and saying, you know what, I'm not going to reach everybody, but I'm going to leverage and reach the people that I can, and leverage a tool that can be abusive, and we can use it in a horrible way, or we can use it in a beneficial way. And I'm going to go through this world one person at a time and try my best, because I don't want to be the person who, when they came to get you, I did nothing.
Right? The bystanders and the upstanders. Exactly. That's like my two favorite words is upstander, bystander. You had bystanders that just didn't want to get involved in this situation because it would have affected them, and it would have maybe affected their child's status, whatever that means. And then you had the ones that were there, front and center. But you're just as bad if you're a bystander.
You're worse, because those are the ones who are photographing it or videoing whatnot. My kids are like, photograph, Mom. How old are you? Right. But they're the ones who get their iPhones out and they're videoing the whole thing. And you think to yourself, someone's being beaten, whether it's verbally, physically, you name it, and there's someone there videoing it so they can get their 2 cents worth and have their moment It's absolutely despicable and disgusting.
But
they're worse.
That's why it works, right? That's why people do this, because there's this reinforcement loop, right? They get more viewers, they use this, and now people react to it, or they laugh, or they get feedback. And we live in an instant
that's what it is always when you post something, right? How many people like it or
exactly.
They probably hate you behind the scenes, but they're like, "Oh, so gorgeous! You're so beautiful,"
Yeah, and so it just reinforces and gets bigger and bigger. And listen, not for nothing, but like if I was bullied in Boca Raton, Florida, back in our day, 15 people knew about it because they were the ones in my close cohort that would have watched it happen. Not across the country, across the world, at different high schools everywhere, because there was no access.
And so not only that, sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Boca, but then you're forgetting the fact that then it's also indelible. There's a mark in the world of the internet up there, and whatever this cloud thing is, that it lives on forever. And that's the piece that's so painful for the victims. And that's why I feel like there needs to be consequences.
I was gonna say the consequences, we've had friends of ours that had boys attacking girls on the Snapchat and inviting other girls in and abusing them. And Jewish boys, by the way, utilizing the term Nazi because maybe the girl had facial hair or something like that, or a mustache. Like, you couldn't get dumber and so uneducated to use Hitler and Nazi to describe a girl, and you're a Jewish boy that was bar mitzvahed. Like,
It's
are you
disgusting. I have no
insane?
words. I have
So
no words.
but you have the consequences that I think about that is, why don't you take we and a friend of mine have all the snapshots of this. Why don't you take these and like forward them to the colleges that they are applying to? Because without consequences, you're never going to have any they're just going to fly. That's why everything continues. You know what I mean? And the phone is a disaster, but at the same time, I have all of the snapshots of everything that was done to my daughter. They're always going to be with me. And if I ever need to use them, I will, because that's the only way someone, unfortunately, that's the only way someone will learn, because they're thinking about themselves. They're not upset that they did that to somebody. They're just upset now that they've been found out, right? They're not concerned. They're only worried about themselves.
I'm going to say something, and I hate that I'm going to be right about it, but I think it's just the fact that if you have not been the subject of some type of bullying, whether it was before, in our generation, before the internet, or now in today's world of this advanced technology, then it's not even 7 degrees of separation. It's way closer than that. And everyone has been affected in one way, shape, or form. And it is so important that we continue to have the conversations and educate our kids. Once a kid, there always are kids, right? And we have to continue to constantly drill in the good and the positive, and that even though we're seeing such hatred in the world, we can combat it with love and kindness and knowledge and sharing and community, and not give up, right?
Yeah,
And not give up.
And that's what I was going to say, Rach. I think so many parents just give up, right? And they don't parent anymore. And I'm not saying it's just parents, it's global here, right? But if everybody did and took responsibility for the people that they brought into this world, right? Or the people that they adopted after they were brought into this world, however we want to look at it, even if that's all they did, and took responsibility to raise them to be really good human beings, we would see a decrease in this.
Yes.
Right. But people don't want to do what's hard anymore. Right. Could you imagine, like I say this to we joke all the time that like, I love Evian. I have Evian everywhere. Okay. And the joke is, if an EMP happens, like, I'm out in 2 seconds because I'm not going to survive without my Evian. However, I have thought on a serious level, would myself included, but my children, be able to make it 10 days, okay, in what's going on overseas right now? Would they be able to make it? And I don't know. I want to believe that we have instilled things in them, and there's endurance and perseverance and resiliency, and they would figure out if they didn't have power for 10 days, or they had
exactly. Could
they survive, right?
Exactly. I've thought about that often.
Yeah. Or if God forbid the Holocaust again, and trudging through the snow, would I have just given up, right? And I think that's the message. We have to do the hard work, right? Because if we don't do the hard work, there's no way our children are going to be able to do it.
No, definitely not.
Right. And learned behavior goes both ways. We learn the good stuff and we learn the bad stuff. Right. And so that's, I think what's missing is hard work, dedication, determination, commitment, work ethic, all of those values, family values, right? They're not grounded anymore.
No.
And now we have a platform, and
it's not prevalent anymore.
Yeah. And it's just exploding everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. And so even if we can just do a little bit with the people that we have in our little circle, our children that we're responsible for, we can make a difference. Or have a platform like you do, Sam, or that guy in the UK, or the guys on the college campuses and women on the college campuses that are trying to educate, to change the narrative a little bit, to give them reality, right? Whatever you can do, to our listeners, whatever you can do to
Yes,
just
definitely.
make
You have to stick
ripple.
with it. You have to have
Yep.
that stick to itiveness. You can't,
Mhm.
and a lot of times also these kids, like, they don't climb over the hurdles. Their parents are like lifting them, pushing them over.
Snow
Like they don't
plowing.
have, yeah, they don't have that, they're not being taught the tools like you said. And when you mention the kids overseas, I'm assuming you're referring to the Israelis.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So we had hosted for 2 years in a row, two boys before they went into the army. We were involved in this Shinshanim program, and we had two
Mhm.
boys that came to live with us in Merrick before we had moved to Florida. And we are so close with them still. We're talking 8 years ago. And, one is in the Air Force, doing a lot of stuff now. And the other one has been a reservist doing a lot of stuff after October 7th, heartbreaking stories he told me about. And my family, we were just in Israel in December. And you see such a difference there. And, I don't want to negate America and the American kids, but when you see these kids that go to the army, both female and
yeah.
male at 18, it's
course.
a whole nother
Oh.
world.
Yep.
They
They
are,
have grit, they have passion,
oh
they
my
have
God.
commitment, they are resilient, they
Yes.
understand because they are grounded in an identity.
Yes.
And and I think
They're
it's lacking
fabulous.
here because
And they
we've
also
been
don't
taught-
have time for the bullshit too. They're
They
able
don't.
to
They
kind of
don't.
cut through the mud immediately. They know what's important. They know what their values are, and they know what is just complete rhetoric nonsense that is just a
Exactly.
waste of time and space.
Exactly. It's a whole
And
nother
we should
culture.
all learn from that.
Yeah.
We
Amen.
should. It
It's
just
true.
makes me so angry. Samantha, I want to. I mean, we could keep going and going, and I always say, Dr. Boca knows this. Once a friend of our show, always a friend. And I
Thank
hope
you
that
so
you
much.
know
I
you have an
appreciate
open
that.
door policy to come back and talk with us anytime.
Absolutely. I
But
would love
I
to.
I am certain that our listeners near and far will love to reach out to you. And if they have
That's
questions or concerns, how do our listeners and our viewers find you to listen to you or reach out privately? Share with our listeners a little bit.
You can give them my email, my phone number. I am constantly, near my phone, and I'm happy to help morning, noon, and night. I want to be that person that can help someone through something that, maybe otherwise they would not be able to do. People need confidence to move forward. And if you have someone to talk to, I know, given my childhood, I spent a lot of time in therapy, and I did a lot of work to work on myself. And, it always came back to me finding someone to speak to about something that even outside of my home, that was where I found more of my peace. Because, you could speak to someone and, I love me too. When I hear me too, you found the right person, and you can then take the conversation further. And it's just, you find that your people, you're not going to be many because, they're not that many people that you want to trust, because sometimes it doesn't work out in your favor. But again, you pick yourself up, you move forward, and you go to the next person. And I want to be that person for people that, otherwise think that this is maybe a hopeless situation.
And also, Samantha, tell them a little bit, remind them the title of the podcast, and also to our listeners, if anybody has experienced an episode of bullying in their life and they want to tell their story, we know that Samantha's always welcome to have you on her podcast. So we can definitely connect you. You can reach out. Rachel will put all the information. Yeah, she'll put the information and the links and everything. But you could have a platform.
The Break on Bullying, and it's done out of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center in Glen Cove, or you can do it by Zoom. And I would love to have. I think the more we get out there, the more stories, and other people feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you that I feel less alone just in the hour that we spoke, because again, I think we've all unfortunately have had our toe dipped in the bullying pond, sadly. And it feels great to know that there are people out there with such compassion and such empathy and such commitment to making this world a better, safer, happier, more loving environment for ourselves, our children, and our children's children. Because let's face it, this is generational, as we said on the top of the hour here. How we were raised is how we're raising our kids. And we have an obligation to pay it forward in a beautiful direction.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Thank you for that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Boca, thank you for being with me today. And I know we started the top of the hour kind of out of whack, and now I feel like we have our heads screwed on a little bit straighter, a little bit kinder, maybe a little bit more open to taking a beat, taking a moment, thinking before we speak, and remembering that behind a pretty face, behind big, strong muscles, everyone's got a story, everyone's got a past, everyone potentially has something that's going on that is not visible to the naked eye. And
you don't have to love everybody, and you don't have to, you don't have to, not necessarily do we like every single person we come into, but you need to respect people, and you need to know that someone does have a soul, and they might be hurting, and just your smile or hello or I love your shirt or whatever you want to say may have made a difference in their day. So why not? Why not?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. If you guys out there have questions, comments, concerns for Dr. Boca or myself, you know how to find us at unpolishedtherapy@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Unpolished Therapy. You can watch us on YouTube, should you be so brave, at I guess it's just Unpolished Therapy Podcast, right, DB?
No, I think that's actually our other platform that we're on, TikTok. That's
how do you find us
on? I think it's just Unpolished Therapy.
All right, well, find us that way.
Yeah,
all right.
Well, like us and subscribe.
Right, like, subscribe, share with your friends so that we can get this information out to others. And again, if we help one person, and putting the brakes on bullying with Samantha Sosnik, our special guest today. Thank you, Samantha, for being with us.
You guys, I appreciate it.
Again, I appreciate both of you wonderful ladies. And what can I say? I'm Rachel Silver-Cohen with the one and only DB. This has been another episode of Unpolished Therapy, where we have ditched the couch, grabbed the mics, and today we have broken down all the unpolished wreckage on Unpolished Therapy. Thank you, ladies, for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great sesh, girls. Hey, everyone, like what you heard? Then don't miss out on what comes next. Subscribe now, and please give the girls a 5-star rating. Learn more at www.unpolishedtherapy.com. Find and like them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you next week when Rachel Silver-Cohen and Dr. Boca ditch the couch, grab the mic, and break down all the wreckage.